Hello there and welcome to the Sleepy at Night channel tonight. We drift into one of the strangest and most enchanting mysteries of all, the mystery of perception. It's the quiet force that shapes the world before you're even aware of it. The gentle sculpt that colors every sound, every sight, and every fleeting sensation. Perception lives in the space between the world and the mind. Creating everything you've ever known, it turns vibrations into music and patterns into stories, and the simple touch of air into feeling it is both familiar and impossibly alien, a hidden artist painting the reality you call your own. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way. Here to one sleepy soul at a time, but for now, all you need to do is relax. Let your breathing slow and your body soften, and allow your mind to settle into stillness. Let's begin. Your mind quietly edits reality before you become aware of it, long before you notice. Anything huge amounts of incoming sensation are quietly discarded, softened, or highlighted. Signals from your eyes, ears, skin, and deeper inside your body are all competing for space. And most of them never reach awareness at all. The brain trims away what seems predictable or unimportant, then gently amplifies what appears new, emotional, or relevant to your needs. A familiar room becomes a simple backdrop rather than a jungle of edges and colors. Background sounds blur into a single hush instead of a crowd of separate noises. Even your own heartbeat and breathing drift into silence unless something calls them back into focus. What feels like raw immediate presence is already a heavily edited version of events shaped by hidden priorities that you did not choose consciously. You rarely sense the original, only the curated experience your nervous system has prepared. The world you believe you see is mostly a prediction from your brain in order to keep everything feeling smooth and continuous. The mind is constantly guessing what will appear next and filling in gaps before information fully arrives. When you read a sentence, you know the next word just from the first few letters. When someone speaks, you anticipate the end of their sentence before they reach it. Visual scenes work in a similar way. Once your brain decides that a space contains a wall, a table, and a lamp, it no longer builds each frame from scratch. Instead, it updates a running model, adjusting only tiny details. This saves energy and allows lightning-fast reactions, but it also means you mostly experience your own expectations. Illusions that rely on misleading hints reveal how powerfully the mind commits to its predictions, clinging to them even when the raw image would support a completely different story. Your eyes deliver far less information than your mind leads you to believe. Each glance you cast across a room is not a detailed scan of every surface. It is more like a sampling of a few important points. The highest resolution part of your vision covers only a small patch at the center, while the rest provides a blurrier sense of shapes and movement. Nerve fibers carrying signals out of the eye are limited in number, so the retina must compress and summarize before sending anything onward. Lines, edges, and changes over time are favored, while uniform areas are reduced to simple estimates. Yet the world appears richly detailed wherever you look. That sense of fullness comes from the brain cleverly stitching together many quick glimpses into a seamless whole, then filling in missing detail using memory and expectation. You feel as if you see everything clearly at once, even though only a fraction of the scene ever reaches your awareness and sharp focus. The blind spot in your vision is filled with pure invention. At the back of each eye, where the optic nerve exits, there is a small region without light. Sensitive cells. Any image that falls on that patch leaves no signal at all. You might imagine that this would appear as a black hole floating in your view, but instead you see nothing unusual because the mind conceals the gap completely. Nearby colors, textures, and patterns are extended smoothly across the missing zone, as if an invisible painter has quietly completed the picture. Simple demonstrations where a small object vanishes when moved through a particular position reveal that something strange is happening. Yet in everyday life, the process feels perfectly natural. This quiet repair work hints at how willing the brain is to create content when needed. Reality as you perceive it is not just received, it is actively rebuilt to hide its own imperfections. You are always living slightly in the past, because perception takes time. Every sound you hear, every light you see, every touch you feel has already traveled along nerves, been processed through networks, and woven together into a unified moment. Each of those steps consumes precious fractions of a second, rather than show you events as separate Delayed fragments, the brain waits a little, pulling information over a brief window before presenting it as a single. Now signals from your eyes and ears, which move at different speeds, are adjusted so they feel synchronized. Motion is smoothed so that moving objects do not appear to jump. This clever timing trick means that the present you experience is actually a kind of recent past, a summary of what just happened. The real universe has already moved on slightly by the time you become aware of it yet. The delay is so consistent and carefully managed that you feel fully up to date. The sense of self you carry may be a kind of guided hallucination. Deep within your mind, countless signals about your body, memories, goals, and social world are combined into a single character that feels like you. That character seems continuous and solid, yet it can subtly shift from moment to moment. Changes in mood, posture, or context can alter how large or small you feel in a room, how confident or uncertain you seem to yourself, even how close you feel to your own body. Certain experiences show how fragile this construction can be when senses are disturbed or conflicting information is presented. People sometimes feel as if they have floated outside their body, or as if their hands belong to someone else. The narrative that says, "I am here, I am this person, I am the one who is seeing," is held together by ongoing processes that never stop. The self feels like a simple fact, yet it may be one more story your brain tells to make sense of everything it encounters. You actually see with your brain rather than with your eyes. The eyes function as intricate lenses and sensors, gathering changing patterns of light, but those patterns mean nothing until they are interpreted by the regions at the back of the head. Their waves of electrical activity transform images into shapes into objects, and objects into meaningful scenes. If parts of this system are disrupted, a person may still have healthy eyes, yet be unable to recognize faces, or may see motion as a sequence of frozen frames. Conversely, when these areas are stimulated directly, people report flashes of color, or simple forms even incomplete. Darkness. Some visual prostheses aim to bypass damaged tissue by sending simplified patterns straight into the brain, creating points of light that can eventually be assembled into useful images. All of this reveals that the vivid world of color, depth, and movement you experience is crafted inside your skull, using light as only the starting ingredient. Hearing is shaped partly by the guesses your brain makes when someone speaks in a noisy room. The sound reaching your ears is messy, filled with echoes and competing voices, yet you effortlessly pick out familiar words and tones. The nervous system does not simply record vibrations. It actively searches for patterns that match known language and familiar voices when pieces of a sentence are masked by a brief burst of noise. Listeners often report hearing a complete phrase, as if the missing fragment had been present. All along, the mind appears to insert the expected sounds into the gaps, smoothing them into the flow of speech. Music shows a similar effect. Once you know a melody, your inner sense of it can continue, even when the external sound stops, and you may still feel each note landing at the right moment. What seems like straightforward hearing is actually a collaboration between external airwaves and an internal model of how the world ought to sound. Touch becomes a story your mind assembles from scattered signals inside your skin. Many different receptors respond to pressure, stretch, vibration, temperature, and chemical changes. Each type sends its own stream of information along separate paths. Those impulses arrive at different times and intensities, yet they are woven into a single sensation, such as a gentle stroke, a sharp prick, or the weight of a resting hand. Context matters enormously. A light contact can feel pleasant when it comes from a trusted person, yet alarming when unexpected. The same force feels different depending on whether you are braced for it or relaxed. Even the shape of an object in your palm is not directly sensed as a whole. Instead, tiny details from individual points on your skin are combined into a coherent image, like assembling a sculpture from scattered fragments. What you experience as a simple touch is actually a rich narrative created moment by moment from many small voices within your body. Your sense of balance is a quiet orchestration of motion, fluid, and prediction. Hidden deep inside your ears are tiny canals filled with liquid and studded with delicate hair cells that bend when you move your head. Nearby structures contain small crystals that tug on sensors as gravity pulls on them. Signals from these organs merge with information from muscles and joints that report how your limbs are arranged, and with visual cues about the horizon and surrounding space. Together, They create a continuous feeling of up, down, and motion when these systems drift out of agreement, as happens in spinning rides or during sea travel. The coordination falters, and dizziness or nausea can arise in conditions where gravity is reduced or absent, such as orbital flight. The brain must recalibrate and learn a new sense of orientation. Although you rarely notice it when everything works, this invisible network tirelessly keeps you upright, guiding every step in subtle sway as you move through the world. Color exists only inside your mind. Although it feels like a property of the outer world, the experience of color begins as nothing more than different kinds of light entering the eyes, the wavelengths themselves. Gary no hue, they are simply energy in motion inside the retina. Specialized cells respond to these variations and send intricate patterns of signals toward the brain. Those signals are blended with memories, expectations, and context to create something that feels vivid and real. A single shade can shift dramatically depending on the surrounding light or the objects placed beside it. In some situations, a patch of gray appears, bright blue, or a warm tone suddenly seems cool. These transformations reveal how much interpretation is taking place behind the scenes. Color becomes a story told by the nervous system, adapted moment by moment to help you detect contrast, form, and meaning without the mind giving shape to these signals. There would be no red, no green, no gentle wash of gold at sunset, only silent variations of energy waiting to be transformed into something beautiful. Time can stretch or shrink depending on how you attend to it. The passing of moments is not measured by some inner clock ticking at a fixed rate. Instead, it is sculpted by shifting amounts of attention, emotion, and surprise when you are deeply absorbed in something. Engaging minutes can slide past almost unnoticed, yet when you wait for an anticipated event, each second can feel unusually long. Novel experiences often seem more spacious because the mind is gathering more detail, creating richer memories that make the interval feel extended when you look back. During frightening incidents, people sometimes report that everything unfolded in slow motion. This happens because the brain gathers information at a faster rate, making the event feel more densely packed with experience. Conversely, repetitive tasks can compress entire hours into what feels like a brief interval. Time in the mind is a flexible landscape. Awareness flows freely across it, shaping the length of each experience according to how deeply you attend and how strongly emotion colors the moment. The motion you perceive is partly invented, so the world feels stable every time an object shifts across your field of vision. The eyes make rapid adjustments to track its position. These movements are quick and frequent, yet they do not appear as jarring jumps. Instead, the brain smooths the sequence into a continuous flow, even the motion created by your own eye movements. While you scan, a scene is erased from awareness so that the world appears still. When frames of visual information fail to arrive in perfect order, the mind fills the gaps with predicted positions, creating the illusion that objects moved with constant speed. Some visual displays take advantage of this tendency by showing static images and carefully timed patterns that create the experience of animation. The smoothness you sense is not an accurate reflection of the raw input, but a constructed story designed to help you navigate your surroundings without confusion. You rarely see motion as it physically occurs. You see motion as your mind believes it should unfold. Every time you recall a memory, it changes. Memories may feel like preserved snapshots of earlier moments, yet they are living structures that shift each time they are accessed. When you remember something, the memory becomes temporarily malleable. It blends with present thoughts, emotions, and interpretations before being stored again in a slightly altered form. Tiny adjustments can accumulate over the years, subtly reshaping the story you believe about past events. People often become confident in details that never occurred or misplace the timing of an experience. Without realizing it, emotions also influence which parts of the memory stand out and which fade away. A joyful moment may grow even warmer over time, while a stressful one might gain clarity that was not present originally. This constant revision helps the mind keep memories relevant, but it also means that recollection is not a simple retrieval. It is an act of reconstruction, guided by what you know now. As much as by what happened then, your brain chooses what matters long before you consciously decide. While you move through the world, countless sights, sounds, and sensations reach your senses. Every moment before any of these become meaningful, deeper parts of the brain sort them, rapidly boosting what appears important and dimming what seems irrelevant. This selection process happens automatically and far more quickly than conscious thought. Sudden movement in the corner of your eye can pull your attention even before you understand what it is. A familiar voice rising above background noise may reach awareness. While other sounds fade, this filtering helps you react swiftly and prevents your mind from being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of incoming information when you later feel as though you have chosen to notice something. Much of that choice has already been made behind the scenes by networks. Shaped through experience, emotion, and instinct, awareness becomes the final stage in a long chain of silent decisions that guide your attention without effort. Attention captures only a tiny portion of the world at any moment, despite feeling surrounded by a detailed environment. The amount you can take in consciously is remarkably small. Your focus behaves like a narrow beam of light that illuminates one region while leaving everything else in soft shadow. When this beam rests on a specific object or idea, other information simply fades from awareness, even if it remains within your field of vision. People engaged deeply in a task often fail to notice large changes happening nearby, a phenomenon revealed by experiments where unexpected events pass directly through a scene without being recognized. This limited scope is not a flaw, but a way for the mind to allocate its resources. Where they are most useful, attention selects what will be processed thoroughly and what will be handled by quick automatic systems. Everything outside that slender spotlight continues to exist, but only a small fraction enters. The space of conscious experience your senses often compete for, which one will dominate when sight, sound, and touch offer conflicting interpretations of the same situation. The brain must choose which sense to trust. Often vision wins because it supplies detailed information about shape and movement, yet there are moments when sound overrides what you see or when touch corrects misleading visual cues. This competition helps maintain a stable experience of the world, since relying on all senses equally would create confusion when they disagree sometimes. The senses fuse their inputs, producing entirely new experiences, such as hearing a slightly altered sound after watching someone's lips move in a certain way other times. One sense acts as the final judge, guiding your interpretation of the event. This shifting hierarchy reveals that perception is not a simple sum of its parts. It is a negotiation with each sense contributing evidence to a complex internal decision. About what reality is most likely to be, smell carries more emotional power than any other sense. You have a faint scent, can unlock memories that have remained dormant for years. This power arises because olfactory pathways connect directly to regions of the brain involved in emotion and memory without passing through many layers of processing. As a result, smells can evoke vivid images and feelings with surprising speed and intensity. The aroma of soil after rain might call up childhood afternoons, while a trace of perfume may bring back the presence of someone you have not seen in a long time. Unlike vision or hearing, which focus on detailed spatial information, smell captures the chemical essence of the environment and ties it to in our experience. Animals rely on it heavily to navigate social worlds, and humans retain a deep sensitivity to it, even if they are not always aware of its influence. A single breath can change your mood, sharpen your awareness, or transport you into a forgotten moment. Your eyes never truly hold still, even when you think they do. During every moment of wakefulness, tiny shifts in gaze occur continuously. These movements are so small and rapid that you rarely sense them. Yet they prevent the world from fading. If the eyes ever remained perfectly fixed on a single scene, the image would slowly disappear as the receptors in the retina adapted to the unchanging pattern. The subtle flicks and tremors refresh the visual field, ensuring that edges, textures, and contrasts remain vivid even when reading. Your gaze jumps in brief bursts across the words, pausing only long enough to gather essential information before leaping again. These motions also allow your brain to compare different parts of a scene and build a cohesive understanding of shape and depth. What feels like a steady stare is actually a complex dance of constant corrections that make stable vision possible. Rely on far more senses than the familiar five. Beyond sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, your body uses a wide array of specialized systems to interpret the world. You sense the position of your limbs, even in complete darkness, through networks that track tension in muscles and movement in joints. You monitor the pull of gravity and rotation through delicate structures in the inner ear. You detect temperature, pain, and internal states such as hunger, heartbeat, and breath. These additional senses provide a continuous flow of information that supports everything from walking to emotional awareness. Without them, the world would feel sparse and disorienting. Scientists continue to uncover even more subtle forms of perception including the ability to notice atmospheric pressure changes or detect faint magnetic influences. The boundaries of your sensory world are far richer and more intricate than the traditional list suggests. Dreams reveal a version of the world built entirely from within. When you fall asleep, the mind shifts into a state where it no longer receives the usual stream of sensory information, yet it continues to create a vivid universe filled with landscapes, voices, movement, emotion. None of these elements arrive from the outside. They rise from memory fragments, instinctive patterns, and spontaneous bursts of neural activity that your brain arranges into scenes you experience as real. A single impression can blossom into an entire storyline. While subtle emotional undercurrents shape the tone of everything that unfolds, familiar faces appear in strange places and impossible events feel natural. Because there is no need for the mind to check them against physical reality, dreams reveal how effortlessly the brain constructs a world. When freed from external constraints, they show that perception does not require light or sound or touch. It requires only the ability to weave meaning from internal signals, creating a temporary reality that can feel just as deep and convincing as waking life. Sound can alter what you think you are seeing. Your visual system works closely with your auditory system, and the two constantly exchange information to keep your experience coherent. A sound that arrives at the exact moment a visual change occurs can shift what you believe you saw, even if the image itself did not change. A short burst of noise can make a single flash appear, as to a sudden tone can make a small movement appear. Larger films and animation rely on this partnership by using carefully timed audio to make simple visual actions feel more dramatic or lifelike. In daily life, sound helps the mind judge distance, direction, texture, and timing. When these cues misalign, the brain tries to repair the conflict, often giving priority to whichever sense seems more informative in that moment. This blending creates a smooth experience but also makes perception surprisingly easy to influence. A simple sound can rewrite what you believe you saw without your awareness. Sight can completely change what you believe you are hearing. Hearing is not purely a matter of sound waves reaching the ears. It is deeply influenced by what you observe visually. When you watch a person speak, your brain integrates the movement of their lips with the sound of their voice into a single experience. If the visual pattern does not match the auditory pattern, your mind may alter the way the sound seems in order to resolve the mismatch. This effect can make identical sounds seem different depending on how the speaker moves in crowded environments. Watching someone's mouth can help you understand their speech, even when their voice is nearly drowned out. Music performances feel richer, partly because you see the source of each note. This tight coupling shows how much hearing depends on context. The mind aims to create a unified interpretation rather than to separate streams, and when they conflict, vision often guides the final result. Your sense of your own body can be reshaped with surprising ease, although your body feels stable and familiar. The way you perceive it is built from many different sources of information. Signals from muscles, skin, joints, and inner organs continuously create a map of where you are and how you are positioned. Yet this map can shift dramatically when the brain receives conflicting cues. If you see a hand move in perfect synchrony with your own movement, you may begin to feel as though the hand is part of your body even when you know it is not. If your posture is altered gradually, you may not notice the change until you see yourself in a mirror. Even clothing and tools can become integrated into your sense of space, making them feel like natural extensions of your body. This adaptability helps you navigate the world efficiently, but it also shows that your bodily awareness is more flexible and constructed than it appears. People sometimes feel sensations in limbs that are no longer present after a limb is lost. Many individuals continue to feel warmth, pressure, movement, or even pain from the missing region arise, because the brain still maintains a map of the body. The once received signals from that limb remain active, and they can be triggered by nearby regions, internal rhythms, or emotional state. Touching the skin near the missing limb can produce sensations that seem to originate from the absent part of the body. Over time, the brain can reorganize this map, but the old patterns never vanish entirely. These sensations demonstrate that perception is not tied directly to physical structure. It is tied to the patterns the brain expects and the pathways it has learned to use. The feeling of a limb continues because neural story of that limb is still being told. Your brain is capable of generating vivid sensory experiences without input in complete darkness. People sometimes see shapes or flickers of color in deep silence. Faint tones or murmurs may drift through awareness experiences. Because sensory areas of the brain remain active, even when their external signals are quiet, they produce spontaneous patterns that resemble genuine perception. When imagination or memory, these experiences can feel almost indistinguishable from real sight or sound. Intense concentration on an imagined object can make it feel as though it has texture, temperature, or weight. Sensory deprivation amplifies these effects by removing competing signals. The brain does not become empty. When the world falls silent, it becomes more creative, filling the void with internally generated impressions that reveal how much of perception is built inside the nervous system rather than delivered from outside. You often see faces where no face exists. The human brain is deeply tuned to detect faces, since recognizing others quickly is vital for communication and safety. This tuning is so strong that even random patterns can trigger the impression of eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Clouds, shadows, tree bark, or the arrangement of windows on a building can suddenly take on a human expression. This tendency appears early in life and persists throughout adulthood. The brain devotes specialized areas to facial recognition, and these areas remain active even when the pattern is only vaguely similar to a real face. Although this can lead to false detections, it also allows you to spot real faces instantly in crowded environments. The phenomenon shows how eager the mind is to impose order on chaotic shapes. You are wired to find meaning in patterns, and faces are among the strongest magnets for attention. Taste is mostly smell, wearing a different mask. When you enjoy food, the flavors you sense are created by a combination of taste receptors on the tongue and scent molecules traveling through the back of the nasal passages. The tongue detects broad categories such as sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and savory, while the far more detailed aspects of flavor come from smell. If your nose is blocked, many foods lose their distinctiveness and seem strangely flat when scent is strong. Tiny changes in aroma can transform the entire flavor profile. The mind blends both sources of information into one seamless experience. This partnership explains why warm foods often taste richer, since heat carries more scent molecules upward. It also explains why memories of taste are tied closely to memories of smell. What feels like a single sense is really a duet with smell, providing the complexity, and taste offering the foundation. Texture alone can change the flavor you think. You sense the way food feels, and the mouth shapes your experience as powerfully as its chemical composition. A creamy texture can make a mixture seem sweeter or richer, even when no additional ingredients are present. A crisp or crunchy surface can make flavors seem brighter or more intense. Smooth textures calm the palate, while rough or fibrous textures may heighten awareness of subtle notes. Temperature also interacts with texture to influence how quickly flavors spread and how strongly they register. Ice cream tastes different when slightly softened because the change in texture alters how the flavors unfold. Even identical food can taste different depending on how it is prepared. Simply because the texture cues guide your expectations, the mind treats texture as a form of information, shaping the flavor before you consciously analyze it. The feeling of owning your body is an illusion. Your mind maintains at any moment you experience your body as a unified whole that belongs to you, yet this feeling is created by many separate systems working together. Visual information confirms where your limbs are. Sensory signals report pressure, temperature, and stretch. Internal cues track heartbeat, respiration, and posture. The brain binds these signals into a single sense of ownership. When that binding is disrupted, the feeling can shift or even detach. Certain illusions can make a person feel as though a rubber hand or a virtual body is their own. In some rare situations, people feel as if they are observing themselves from outside. These experiences reveal that body ownership is not fixed. It is a story maintained through constant coordination. As long as the signals agree, you feel at home in your body. When they do not, the sense of ownership can drift in surprising ways. You can miss events unfolding right before your eyes, even when something happens directly in your field of vision. There is no guarantee that you will register it. The mind filters so quickly and with such confidence that unexpected events may slip through unnoticed if your attention is directed elsewhere. In experiments where a surprising object moves through a scene, many people fail to notice it at all, even though It is large and brightly visible. This happens because your brain prioritizes what it already believes to be important and suppresses anything that does not fit the current focus. When attention is locked onto a specific task, the surrounding world becomes muted, and the mind fills in the background with assumptions rather than details. This is not a weakness, but a strategy that helps you navigate an overwhelming environment, yet it also reveals how partial your moment-to-moment awareness truly is. You see far less than you believe, and you often do not realize what has been missed. Attention can disappear without you noticing its absence. At times, your awareness drifts away so effortlessly that you only realize it after it returns. This quiet fading happens during long conversations, repetitive tasks, or even while observing something that initially seemed interesting. Instead of staying fully present, your mind slips into an automatic mode in which perception continues, but conscious engagement fades. The world does not disappear during these periods. It simply moves into the background while internal thoughts or subtle distractions take center stage. When attention finally returns, there is often a small moment of surprise, as if the scene is shifted slightly without your participation. This gentle vanishing and reappearing of focus shows how dynamic attention is. It is not a constant beam of clarity, but a wandering presence that can dim or brighten without warning. Your awareness of the world depends less on the senses and more on the delicate movements of attention itself. Constant familiar objects fade from awareness. Anything that remains unchanged for long enough can vanish from conscious perception. A ticking clock becomes silent, the weight of clothing disappears, and the faint hum of appliances blends into nothingness. Even stationary visual objects such as a painting on a wall or an ornament on a shelf can stop registering entirely once your brain concludes they pose no new information. This fading happens because the mind is designed to detect change rather than stability. Something stops offering new details, the brain reduces its priority and shifts awareness toward anything that might be more relevant. If the familiar object suddenly moves or its color changes even slightly, it snaps back into focus as though it had re-entered the world. This phenomenon highlights how perception is a constant negotiation. What you notice is always shifting, guided by the interplay between novelty and familiarity with the mind, devoting attention only where it seems most useful. Your brain predicts what words you are about to hear or read. Long before a sentence reaches its end, your mind is already constructing likely completions. This predictive process speeds up communication by allowing you to understand language even when parts are muffled, interrupted, or spoken too quickly. When reading, your eyes jump ahead in small leaps, and the brain uses partial glimpses of upcoming words to build expectations. If the next word matches the prediction, comprehension flows smoothly. If it does not, the mind rapidly corrects itself. This constant forecasting explains why you can sometimes misread a sentence that begins in a familiar way, or why you occasionally hear phrases differently from how they were spoken. The brain is trying to help by making the most plausible guess before the full information arrives. Language perception becomes a partnership between incoming signals and internal expectations, merging into a seamless experience of meaning that unfolds faster than conscious thought could manage. Alone, your internal sense of direction depends on subtle cues you rarely notice. Even without a map, you often know roughly where you are and how to return to a familiar place. This ability arises from a network of hidden cues that guide orientation. The angle of sunlight, the feel of air currents, distant sounds, and even faint patterns of magnetic influence all contribute to your internal compass. In addition, the brain tracks each step you take, integrating the direction and distance into a mental path called path integration. When these cues line up, your sense of direction feels effortless and reliable. When they conflict, you may experience sudden disorientation, as if the world has shifted, when in fact only the internal map has lost its anchor. Some animals have extraordinary versions of this system, yet humans also possess a remarkably sensitive orientation sense that usually operates below the level of awareness. You navigate far more by instinctive perception than by conscious reasoning. Expectation and surprise shape your sense of passing time. The flow of time is deeply influenced by what you anticipate will occur when events unfold exactly as expected, moments can feel short and smooth, as though they glide past without texture. When something unusual or surprising happens, time may feel stretched because the mind devotes more resources to processing the unexpected details. Anticipation also slows the experience of waiting, as attention becomes focused on every small moment. Leading up to the desired event after a novel or emotionally intense experience, people often remember it as lasting longer than it really did because the memory holds more information in contrast routine days seem to vanish quickly. In hindsight, these shifting perceptions reveal that time in the mind is not measured by clocks. It is shaped by emotion, novelty, and prediction, each one bending the sense of duration into something uniquely personal rather than precise. You weave a continuous world from scattered, sensory fragments. Each sense delivers its own separate stream of signals, each arriving with slight delays and different forms. Instead of presenting these inputs individually, the brain merges them into a single coherent experience. A visual flash, a sound, and a touch may occur at different actual times, yet you perceive them as one event because the brain aligns them into a unified moment. Gaps are filled, inconsistencies are smoothed, and stray signals are blended into a story that feels whole. Without this synthesis, the world would appear disjointed and confusing, full of tiny mismatches rather than seamless flow. The mind acts like an editor assembling a film from scattered clips, selecting the best arrangement to create a stable narrative. What feels like direct perception is actually a constructed tapestry woven from many independent threads, each handled so gracefully that the stitching is invisible. Imagined experiences can be mistaken for real ones. When imagination taps into the same neural circuits used for perception, the resulting experience can feel remarkably lifelike. A vividly imagined sound may echo with surprising presence. A recalled scent may seem to drift through the air. A mental image of a place from your past may appear with clarity that rivals actual vision. These experiences occur because the brain does not always distinguish between internally generated activity and genuine sensory input. If the internal pattern is strong enough, the mind interprets it as real. This blending is especially common when you are tired, deeply focused, or emotionally charged. It also plays a role in dreams, daydreams, and certain memory experiences where imagined and remembered details merge. These moments show that perception is not strictly tied to the outside world. It is shaped by the brain's ability to create sensations from within, sometimes so convincingly that they feel indistinguishable from reality. You hear your own voice differently from everyone else. When you speak, the sound reaches your ears through two pathways. One pathway is the air around you, carrying vibrations like any other sound. The second is the vibration of your bones resonating inside your head.
Ow.
This internal vibration emphasizes deeper tones that others do not hear. As a result, your voice feels richer and more familiar to you than the version that appears in recordings. When people first hear their recorded voice, they often feel surprised or uncomfortable because the internal component is missing. The brain becomes accustomed to the blend it hears during speech, so the external-only version seems unfamiliar. This dual-channel perception reveals how unique your experience of your own voice truly is. No other person hears the exact combination of vibrations that you do. Your inner sense of your body does not match the outer view others see. Inside your mind lives a personal map of your body that guides movement, posture, and interaction with the world. This map is shaped by sensation rather than appearance, and it does not always align with what a mirror reveals. The internal body feels larger or smaller depending on emotion, tension, or fatigue. Certain regions may feel closer or farther away than they physically are. Some people experience vivid awareness of parts of the body that are barely visible, while other regions feel distant unless touched or moved. This internal perception influences how you walk, gesture, and position yourself. It also affects how you interpret the actions of others, since you compare what you see with how your own body feels. The difference between inner and outer body does not indicate confusion. It simply shows that perception is guided by what the body senses, rather than by what the eyes observe. Vision does not treat all areas of your visual field equally. Although the world appears evenly detailed wherever you look, only a small central region. It actually offers sharp resolution. This area, packed densely with specialized cells, is responsible for detecting fine detail and color with clarity. Everything outside this focused zone becomes progressively less precise, providing only broad shapes, motion, and general brightness, yet the brain compensates for this limited detail by stitching together many small eye movements into the illusion of a full, crisp panorama. Your eyes sweep across a scene in tiny bursts, gathering fragments that the mind blends into a unified whole. You rarely notice the uneven distribution because the brain fills gaps with memory and prediction. This seamless integration creates the impression that your entire field of view is equally sharp. Even though most of it is constructed from rough impressions rather than precise visual input, tiny contextual details change. How large or small objects appear. Your perception of size depends not only on the object itself, but also on the surrounding shapes, patterns, and distances. An object can feel much larger when placed among smaller neighbors, or shrink when set beside something imposing. Even simple line drawings can transform your sense of scale if the angles or contexts hint at depth or perspective. The brain relies on relational cues to judge size because absolute measurements are rarely available. Through raw vision, light, shadow, and texture, all add subtle hints that influence interpretation in everyday life. This means a room can seem more spacious when it contains fewer objects, or when walls have certain patterns. It also means familiar items may appear strangely large or small. When viewed out of context, perception constantly adjusts scale to maintain a coherent world. Even if that means reshaping the size of objects based on their surroundings, light and shadow, drastically reshape your sense of depth and form. A flat surface can appear three-dimensional when shadows fall across it in just the right way. Slight changes in illumination alter your interpretation of edges, curves, and distances. Light gives shape to the world by highlighting contours and guiding the brain toward a particular understanding of structure. Without shadow, objects lose their depth and appear strangely weightless when light arrives from unfamiliar directions. Shapes can seem distorted or reversed as if the contours have flipped. Artists rely on these effects to create convincing illusions of volume on a flat canvas in nature. Shifting light transforms landscapes from hour to hour, revealing new layers of texture and distance. Your perception of form is inseparable from the dance of light and darkness. What you see is a partnership between physical surfaces and the illumination that sculpts them into meaning. Your mind smooths over visual jumps, so reality appears seamless whenever you move your eyes. Large portions of the visual scene sweep rapidly across the retina. This movement should cause abrupt shifts, yet you rarely notice them. Brain temporarily reduces visual sensitivity during eye movements, protecting you from the blur and chaos that would otherwise occur. It then blends the before and after images into a continuous experience. This smoothing effect is so strong that even interruptions such as blinks, which briefly block vision, entirely go unnoticed. The world feels steady not because it is stable, but because your mind edits out the instability. This hidden editing preserves a sense of coherence, giving you the impression of an unbroken flow, even though raw visual input is constantly being disrupted. Reality is perceived as less a stream of images and more a carefully stitched tapestry. You constantly predict the future in order to interpret the present. To keep up with an ever-changing world, the brain makes constant forecasts about what will happen next. These predictions guide perception so effectively that you often sense the expected outcome before the full information arrives. When someone throws a ball, your mind anticipates its trajectory. When you turn your head, the brain predicts the shifting scene before the movement finishes. Even when listening to speech, the next word often feels known before it is spoken. These anticipations allow for fast reactions and smooth interactions with the environment. They also shape what you become aware of, filtering the present through the lens of what the mind believes should be happening. Prediction makes perception faster, but it also means your experience is partly built from expectations rather than pure sensory data. You live in a world that is always one step ahead of itself. Sometimes your brain overpowers your senses when its prediction is stronger. When the brain feels confident in an expectation, it may override conflicting signals from the senses. This is why illusions can feel surprisingly convincing, even when you know they are not real. The mind favors the interpretation that fits its internal model, especially if sensory information is ambiguous or incomplete. If you expect a certain touch, you may feel it before it actually occurs. If you believe a sound should continue, you may hear it faintly even after it stops. Predictions help maintain a stable world, but they also introduce errors when assumptions outweigh evidence. This interplay reveals that perception is not a direct reading of reality. It is a negotiation with the brain, choosing the version of events that seems most probable. Even if the senses whisper a different story, the effort you expect to exert alters how heavy something feels before lifting an object. Your brain makes a quick estimate of its weight based on size, appearance, and past experience. This expectation influences the sensation the moment you pick it up. If you expect something to be heavy, it may feel lighter than anticipated when lifted, creating a small moment of surprise. If you believe it will be light, it may feel heavier than it actually is. These mismatches show how perception of weight is shaped by prediction rather than raw strength. Alone, muscles and nerves provide information about resistance and load, but the brain interprets that information through the filter of expectation. Objects with identical mass can feel dramatically different, depending on context, shape, and your assumptions beforehand. The sensation of weight is as much a cognitive creation as it is a physical experience. The colors around you influence how warm or cold something seems. Temperature perception is deeply tied to visual suggestion. Cool colors, such as soft blues or gentle greens, can make a space feel colder, even when the actual temperature remains. Unchanged warm colors like rich reds or glowing gold tones can create a sense of warmth that alters your bodily experience. This effect extends beyond visual scenes. A drink served in a cup with warm colors may seem hotter, while one in a cooler palette may feel more refreshing. Light also plays a role, as the color of illumination can make an environment feel chilly or cozy. These shifts show how interconnected the senses are. Temperature is not sensed by skin alone, but is influenced by what the eyes suggest. The brain blends clues into a single interpretation, guiding your perception. In unexpected ways, your mind can generate movement. When none exists under certain conditions, the brain interprets static images as moving patterns with repeating shapes. Slight contrasts or alternating colors can create the sensation of motion even though nothing is shifting physically. This happens because the visual system is tuned to detect movement quickly, often relying on assumptions about how objects should behave. When a pattern resembles something that might move, the brain may trigger the motion detectors. Even without actual change in darkness, faint afterimages can drift across the field of vision as neurons adjust their activity. Even the tiny involuntary movement of the eyes can make stationary objects appear to shimmer or slide. These illusions reveal how strongly the mind prioritizes movement, sometimes inventing it when signals are uncertain. Motion, like many aspects of perception, is partly a story. The brain constructs pain can arise purely from expectation. The experience of pain is shaped not only by physical injury, but also by belief, memory, and implication. When you expect something to hurt, the brain may amplify the slightest discomfort or even produce a sensationless response. Occurs because pain is a protective signal designed to encourage caution. If the brain predicts danger, it prepares the body by heightening sensitivity in certain situations. Individuals feel pain after seeing something they believe is harmful, even if it is not. Conversely, when people expect little discomfort, genuine pain may be reduced. This flexibility shows that pain is not a simple reflection of damage. It is an interpretation shaped by context, emotion, and expectation. The mind creates pain not to deceive but to guard, yet this protective system can sometimes trigger alarms without real cause. Sweetness can be tasted even without sugar. Present your experience of sweetness is not determined only by the chemical contents of what you eat. It is shaped by a combination of expectation, scent, texture, temperature, and the memories tied to similar foods. When your mind anticipates sweetness, it can heighten the activity of taste receptors, so that even mild signals feel more intense than they physically are. Certain aromas naturally suggest sweet flavors, and when they drift through your senses, the brain blends them with taste information to create the impression of sugar. Where none exists, smooth textures or warm temperatures can also amplify this illusion by mimicking the qualities of rich, sugary foods. Some fruits taste sweeter when eaten warm, not because of chemical change, but because the mind interprets the temperature as a sign of ripeness. Even vivid imagination can trigger faint sweetness when you remember a familiar treat. This reveals that flavor is not a simple reflection of chemistry, it is a multisensory construction shaped by anticipation and context. Your mind can create sounds that never reached your ears in moments of deep focus, solitude, or silence. You might hear soft murmurs, faint tones, or imagined voices that feel as though they exist outside your head. These experiences arise because the auditory system remains active, even when the world around you is quiet. Neurons responsible for sound detection continue firing in subtle patterns, and when these patterns align in certain ways, the mind interprets them as external noise. Memory plays a powerful role in shaping these illusions. A song that lingered in your thoughts earlier may echo faintly. As if it were still playing, emotional states can intensify this effect, especially during anticipation or stress. When the brain becomes more sensitive to internal cues, even wind vibration, or the rhythmic flow of blood in your ears, can be transformed into phantom sound when filtered through expectation. The boundary between imagined and external vibration is thinner than it seems. Identical colors are not always perceived as the same hue to patches of color that match perfectly in physical terms can appear different depending on the surrounding environment. Shadows, lighting, contrast, and the colors nearby alter how the brain interprets hue. A gray square may appear blue when surrounded by warm tones, or yellow when placed among cooler shades. This adaptation helps the mind maintain consistent perception in ever-changing lighting outdoors, where sunlight shifts. Throughout the day, your visual system compensates by adjusting perceived color so that familiar objects do not appear to change constantly, yet this powerful correction can create illusions in which identical colors look entirely different. Texture, memory, and emotional state can also influence hue, making the same shade feel warmer or cooler depending on your mood. Color is not a fixed property of the world, but an interpretation shaped by countless subtle influences. Silence can carry a sense of the passage of time, even in complete quiet. You can feel time moving forward, shaped by internal rhythms and subtle sensory cues. The steady beat of your heart, the rise and fall of your breath, and the gentle pulsing of attention create an internal cadence that allows you to sense duration without sound. When silence stretches on, it can feel either rich and spacious, or heavy and slow, depending on your emotional state. In moments of anticipation, silence thickens, each second feeling longer as your mind tracks the absence of expected noise. During meditation or deep relaxation, silence feels expansive, as if moments blend softly into one another. The mind maintains a sense of time, not through external markers, but through patterns of internal activity. Even without a single sound, you can feel the gentle unfolding of each moment your brain filters out most of the sensory world before you notice it. Every second, your senses collect more information than you could ever consciously process. To prevent overload, the brain sorts through this flood of data at astonishing speed, passing only a small portion into awareness. Most background sounds dissolve into a soft blur, and countless visual details never rise above subconscious processing. The temperature of your clothing, the firmness of your seat, and the faint vibrations of your environment all fade into silence, unless something unusual draws attention back to Themthis. Filtering allows you to focus on what seems important while leaving routine sensations to automatic systems. Without this constant selection, the world would feel overwhelming and chaotic. Instead, perception becomes a curated experience shaped by what the brain believes will be useful or meaningful in each moment. The presence of another person can be sensed without seeing them. Even without vision or sound, you may feel that someone has entered the room. This intuitive awareness arises from subtle cues that your senses detect. Without conscious attention, shifts in air pressure, small vibrations in the floor, faint movements of air, or changes in temperature near Your skin can signal the presence of another body. Your brain is finely tuned to these environmental clues, especially in situations where social awareness is important. The nervous system tracks these changes automatically, often long before you decide that someone is nearby. Emotional sensitivity also plays a role. Humans evolved to sense proximity for safety and coordination, and that instinct remains active even in modern environments. This quiet awareness feels almost mystical, yet it comes from refined perception working behind the scenes. Echoes can be mistaken for entirely new sounds when a sound reflects off surfaces. The returning vibrations can arrive with enough delay or distortion that the brain interprets them as separate events. This is especially noticeable in large halls, canyons, or wide-open spaces where echoes stretch into distinct layers. The mind works hard to determine whether a noise is original or reflected, but when timing or clarity becomes ambiguous, it may categorize the echo as a new source. Subtle echoes also shape your sense of space. The brain uses their timing to judge distance and size. Even if you are not consciously aware of the reflections, when echoes become complex, the mind weaves them into patterns that may feel musical, mysterious, or confusing. These interpretations reveal how much perception relies on organizing sound into meaningful structure. Even when the source is simply a reflection of your own environment, you can detect emotion from the quality of a voice alone. A voice carries far more information than the words it speaks. The rhythm, tone, breath, and subtle shifts in pitch reveal emotional states. Almost instantly, even without seeing a face, you can hear tension, warmth, excitement, or unease within a single phrase. This sensitivity arises because vocal expression is shaped by the entire body. Muscles tighten during stress, breath deepens during calm, and energy changes during joy or anger. These physical adjustments alter the sound in ways that the brain recognizes. Instantly, humans evolved to detect emotion through voice for communication and cooperation, and that skill remains powerful today. Remarkably, you can often sense emotion in an unfamiliar language. Even when you do not understand the words, the voice becomes a window into another person's inner world, rich with subtle information. Faces are recognized more quickly than objects. Your brain devotes specialized regions to processing faces, making recognition almost instantaneous, even in a crowded scene. A face can leap to your attention faster than any other shape. This rapid recognition helps you detect identity, emotion, and intention within fractions of a moment. Faces are complex, yet your mind interprets them with remarkable efficiency, picking up tiny movements around the eyes, the tilt of the mouth, or shifts in expression that signal mood. These abilities begin early in life and remain among the most practiced forms of perception because the face conveys so much social information. The brain treats it as a priority, processing it more quickly and thoroughly than ordinary objects. This specialization explains why you can recognize a familiar person from a brief glimpse or a partial view, even when the surrounding context is unclear. Danger is sensed faster than conscious thought can act. When something threatens your safety, the brain responds before you fully understand what is happening. A sudden movement at the edge of your vision, a sharp sound, or an unexpected shift in your environment can trigger an immediate reaction. This rapid process occurs because incoming signals travel through pathways designed for speed, bypassing slower conscious analysis. These pathways activate muscles, increase alertness, and prepare the body to move before the mind has time to interpret the situation. Only afterward does awareness catch up, making sense of what prompted the reaction. This immediate sensing of danger is an ancient survival mechanism that remains active even in modern surroundings. It allows you to move out of harm's way or freeze long enough to gather necessary information. Perception is not always thoughtful. Sometimes it is swift, instinctive, and protective. Your pupils respond to emotion as much as to light. Although pupils widen and narrow to regulate the amount of light entering the eye, they also react to the shifting landscape of your feelings. Excitement may cause them to open slightly, creating a sense that the world has grown a bit brighter. Moments of fear can make them expand as your body prepares for the possibility of sudden movement. Curiosity often produces the same subtle widening a gentle signal that your attention has leaned closer to whatever has captured your interest. Evan, deep affection can influence this reaction, creating a softness in the gaze that others may sense without understanding why. These changes occur because the muscles controlling the pupils are linked not only to illumination, but also to the autonomic nervous system. Emotional states adjust breathing, heart rate, and posture, and they adjust pupil size as well. This response is quiet and continuous, almost impossible to detect in yourself, yet visible enough that those around you can sometimes read it without realizing they are doing so. The eyes may not speak, but they reveal far more about inner states than most people imagine. Vibrations can be felt not only through skin, but through bone. The body is a resonant structure that carries vibration deep beneath the surface. When sound waves or physical tremors meet the skull or the long bones of the limbs, they travel inward. With surprising ease, these subtle movements reach the inner ear, where specialized structures convert vibration into meaningful sensation. This is why your own voice sounds richer to you than it does in recordings. You hear it partly through bone conduction, which adds low tones that others do not perceive. Musical instruments produce similar effects. A deep drum beat can seem to echo inside your chest, and a low string note on a cello can feel as if it travels through the bones of your spine. Even tools such as electric toothbrushes or certain power equipment produce sensations that seem to move through the entire body rather than rest on the skin. Specialized hearing devices use bone conduction deliberately to bypass the eardrum. These experiences reveal that touch is not limited to the surface. The skeleton itself acts as a sensitive channel that carries information inward. Broadening the range of what the body can feel, your brain builds spatial maps out of incomplete glimpses. As you move through unfamiliar spaces, the mind gathers fragments of information from quick glances, reflected sounds, and distant outlines. These fragments become tiny puzzle pieces that the brain assembles into an internal map, even when you never see the entire environment at once. A doorway glimpsed from the corner of the eye becomes an anchor point. The quality of light hinting at a window becomes another. The echo of footsteps or the softness of carpet adds further detail. The brain stitches these clues together, forming a mental layout that allows you to walk confidently through the space on a second. Pass remarkably, this map persists even when the lights are low or when you navigate using memory alone. If something changes, such as a chair being moved, you may notice immediately because the mind expects the environment to match its internal blueprint. This process shows how perception extends beyond what you directly see. The brain constantly predicts and fills in details, turning scattered glimpses into a coherent sense of place that feels complete even when the visual information is thin. Scents can be remembered for astonishing lengths of time. Among all the senses, smell has the most direct and emotionally charged path to memory. A faint aroma can transport you to a moment you have not consciously recalled in years. This happens because scent signals travel from the nose straight to brain regions involved in emotion and long-term memory without passing through the layers of filtering that other senses undergo. As a result, memories tied to scent retain their vividness and emotional texture. The smell of sun-warmed wood may bring back childhood summers. A trace of spice might evoke a meal shared with someone you once knew well. Even since encountered briefly, can become permanent markers in the mind, unlike images or sounds which often lose sharpness over time. Scents return with surprising clarity, as if preserved in a hidden archive. This powerful connection reveals how closely emotion and memory intertwine with sensory experience, and how a single breath can bridge the present moment with the distant past. Your mind exaggerates contrast to help define edges, to understand shapes and boundaries. The visual system amplifies differences between light and dark. This enhancement sharpens edges, making them more distinct than they appear in the raw signal from the eyes. Without this subtle exaggeration, objects would blend together more easily, and the world would appear flatter and more confusing. The brain adjusts contrast, automatically expanding the difference along borders so that they stand out clearly against their surroundings, even when two regions of an image have identical brightness. Small shifts in context can make one appear lighter or darker because of the brain's interpretation. This effect helps You navigate complex environments, interpret shadows, and detect movement. Artists often mimic this natural enhancement to create depth on a flat surface. The process occurs every moment. You are awake, guiding your perception without drawing attention to itself and revealing that what you see is an adapted image rather than a perfect copy of the world. Flavor depends on a combination of sound, color, and texture. Taste begins on the tongue, but the full experience of flavor is woven from many senses working together. The crunch of a crisp apple signals freshness and sharpens the sweetness. A vivid color can make a dish feel richer, while muted tones create the expectation of milder taste. The temperature of the food shapes how aromas rise, and the texture influences how strongly flavors unfold. Even small sounds such as the snap of a biscuit or the fizz of a drink contribute to your impression of taste. These signals reach the brain simultaneously, where they blend into a unified experience. When one component changes, the entire flavor can feel different, even if the ingredients remain the same. Creamy texture may make something seem sweeter, a deep color may make it seem warmer, or more robust flavor becomes a tapestry woven from sound, sight, smell, touch, and taste. Revealing how deeply interconnected your senses truly are, humans can sense magnetic influences more subtly than expected. Although humans do not consciously navigate using magnetic fields, the way some animals do, research suggests that the brain quietly responds to shifts in magnetic orientation inside the skull. Are microscopic particles, rich in iron, that may subtly interact with magnetic forces around you. These interactions do not produce a clear awareness of direction, but they appear to influence certain brain rhythms. Some experiments show that when magnetic conditions change, electrical patterns in the brain shift in ways that suggest the mind has registered the change, even if the person has not. This sensitivity likely developed long ago in distant ancestors who relied more heavily on environmental cues for navigation. Today, it functions as a faint echo of those ancient abilities, quietly integrated into the larger system that helps you maintain orientation and spatial awareness, although you cannot consciously feel magnetic influence. Your nervous system may still react in gentle and nearly invisible ways. Time seems to accelerate as you grow older. In early childhood, each year feels vast and full because everything is new. The mind records more details, and each memory feels rich with discovery. As you grow older and daily life settles into familiar rhythms, fewer moments stand out with the same level of novelty. The brain stores less fresh information, and as a result, long spans seem to compress when you look back on them. A single year in adulthood may hold fewer distinct markers than a single month in childhood. Emotional states influence this perception as well. Stress can make days feel long, but years feel short. Joyful periods may glide by more smoothly, while quieter times leave fewer impressions. The subjective sense of time flows differently depending on how deeply you engage with the world around you. When novelty fades, memory smooths the gaps, making the years seem to drift forward with increasing speed. A moment can feel familiar, even if it has never happened before. This eerie sensation arises when the brain detects a pattern in the present that resembles a structure stored in memory. Even if it cannot locate the exact source, the mind constantly compares what it perceives with what it remembers, searching for matches that help it interpret the world efficiently. When the match is close but incomplete, you may feel a sudden wave of familiarity. Sometimes the sensation comes from overlapping features such as lighting, posture, or a tone of voice. Other times it may result from a brief misfiring of the memory system, causing the brain to treat the present as if it has already been processed. This creates a fleeting impression that the moment has been lived before. Although it can feel mysterious, it reflects the brain's reliance on pattern recognition to make sense of experience. The familiarity is a signal that something in the present aligns with the deep archive of memory. Perception changes noticeably when you are tired. Fatigue affects how your senses gather and interpret information. Colors may lose their vividness, and details may blur as the brain shifts into conservation mode. The world can feel slightly more distant or muted because attention becomes harder to sustain. Sounds may seem sharper or softer than usual depending on your emotional state. Even your sense of rhythm may falter, making movements feel slower or more effortful. Decision-making becomes more reliant on expectation as the mind begins to fill gaps automatically rather than process every detail. Faces can become harder to read, and time pass in irregular ways, with some moments stretching and others collapsing. These changes reveal how much perception relies on mental energy. When that energy wanes, the brain adjusts. By simplifying the world, the result is a softer and less precise reality, shaped as much by tiredness as by the senses themselves. Low light reshapes the colors you believe you see as daylight fades. Your visual world undergoes a transformation you rarely notice consciously. The cells in your eyes that respond to bright light and color begin to quiet, handing responsibility to a different group of cells but function better in dim conditions. These new cells excel at detecting motion and distinguishing shapes, yet they cannot deliver the full richness of color. Reds weaken, first dissolving into a muted brownish tone. Yellows soften and slip toward gray. Blues linger longer, which is why twilight often seems washed in cool tones that feel calm and slightly dreamlike. Streetlights or moonlight create their own special palette, tinting surfaces with subtle hints of gold or silver and shifting your sense of depth. Familiar objects change personality in low light, revealing textures and shadows you never noticed during the day. Your brain attempts to correct these changes by filling in expected colors, but the transformation still shows through. Neat vision reveals that color is not fixed. It is a collaboration between light biology and memory, shifting gently with the environment. Motion appears different in darkness. When visibility lowers, your brain receives less detailed information about edges, shapes, and outlines, forcing it to rely on a different set of cues to interpret movement. Even simple actions take on a new quality. A person walking across a dim street may seem to glide rather than step, because the fine motion of their limbs is lost. Shadows appear to swell or shrink as they shift across surfaces, creating the illusion of movement. Even when nothing has changed at night, your peripheral vision becomes more influential, detecting motion that seems more dramatic than it would appear in daytime. Clarity. Animals outdoors often look larger or faster because darkness smooths their outlines and exaggerates their steps. Even your own movement can feel altered, as if your pace has changed slightly. The brain compensates by leaning more heavily on prediction, which can make moving objects feel strangely fluid or ghost-like. In darkness, motion becomes a softer and more mysterious experience, shaped as much by the limits of vision as by the world itself. Context can alter the pitch you think you hear. Pitch feels like one of the most stable qualities of sound, yet the brain interprets it through a network of expectations, comparisons, and environmental cues. A single tone played in a quiet room seems simple and clear, but if that same tone is heard surrounded by higher or lower sounds, its pitch will feel different. Your mind anchors pitch relative to what it has just heard, adjusting each new sound to fit the pattern. Even visual cues influence this interpretation. Watching a musician move their hand upward may lead your brain to perceive a rising pitch, even if the sound remains steady. When a sound occurs in a large space, echoes can blur or stretch its vibrations, making it feel lower or rounder. When it occurs in a small space, it may feel sharper or brighter. These effects show that pitch is not a purely physical quality. It is an interpretation shaped by context, expectation, and environment, merging external vibration with internal judgment. You can feel a touch your brain predicts before it occurs. The brain continuously anticipates the sensations you are about to experience, especially when you move your hands towards something or expect contact from another person. This prediction is so strong that you might feel a faint sense of touch an instant before the actual contact. When someone reaches toward your arm, the brain prepares for the expected sensation, heightening awareness along the area where touch will occur. The nervous system primes receptors, adjusts posture, and readies the muscles, creating a slight illusion of contact even before anything touches the skin. This anticipation helps you react quickly and avoid potential harm, but it also reveals how actively your mind constructs your sensory world. When touch arrives earlier or later than expected, the prediction can cause a mismatch that feels surprising, as if the world moved out of sync with your expectations. Predicted touch is a quiet demonstration of how perception blends the future with the present. Smoothing your experience into something continuous. Emotion changes the world you perceive. Your emotional state acts as a quiet filter across all your senses, altering how you interpret the world from moment to moment. Joy can make colors appear warmer and more vivid, while sadness may soften the palate and make sounds feel heavier. Anxiety sharpens your attention to small details, making movements feel faster and unexpected noises seem louder. Calmness has the opposite effect, smoothing the edges of experience so the world feels more spacious and gentle. Even taste and smell shift under the influence of emotion. Stress can dull flavors, while happiness can enhance sweetness or brightness in foods. These changes arise because emotion and perception share pathways in the brain. When one intensifies, it influences the other automatically. The world itself does not change, but the interpretation of it does, shaping your surroundings to reflect your inner landscape. Threats attract your attention faster than neutral things. When something potentially dangerous enters your environment, your senses pick it up almost instantly. A sudden movement at the edge of vision, an unexpected sound behind you, or a strange shape in the distance. It can pull your attention before you consciously evaluate it. This rapid shift occurs because the brain maintains specialized systems designed to detect danger using minimal information. These systems work in parallel with regular perception scanning, constantly for signs that something might be harmful. Even when a threat turns out to be harmless, such as a shadow or a falling leaf, your attention has already been drawn toward it. This instinct developed to protect early humans in unpredictable environments, and it remains active today. Even in safe settings, it ensures that you notice potential problems before anything else. Placing survival above curiosity or comfort, attention flows toward threat long before rational thought arrives. Moving objects are easier to track than still ones. Although it might seem that stationary objects are easier to see, the visual system is actually more sensitive to movement. When something moves, the brain receives a stream of changing information that highlights shape, location, and intention. These changes trigger motion-sensitive cells that respond quickly and reliably. A still object, by contrast, provides less dynamic information, making it more likely to fade into the background, especially if it blends with its surroundings. This is why animals freeze to avoid detection, and why subtle movement in a field catches your eye immediately. Even small changes like the flick of a leaf or the shifting of light on water draw attention more quickly. Then static forms. Movement provides the brain with information about direction, speed, and potential significance, making it a priority in perception. Your mind detects patterns far before conscious analysis. Pattern recognition begins long before you become aware of it. The brain works continuously to identify structure in the world, whether in shapes, sounds, or behavior. When you look at a collection of objects, you may feel that something stands out, even without knowing why. Your mind has already spotted a pattern that does not fit. When you listen to a melody, you anticipate the next note because your brain has recognized a structure within the rhythm. These abilities operate beneath awareness, guiding your perceptions and decisions. Before conscious thought participates, you feel drawn to certain arrangements, repelled by others, or curious about patterns that hint at something incomplete. This deep sensitivity to structure helps you navigate complex environments, understand social cues, and interpret the meaning of events with speed and accuracy. Rhythm can be sensed without any actual beats, even in silence. The mind can generate a sense of rhythm based on expectation, memory, or faint environmental cues. Your internal timing systems organize perception into patterns, allowing you to feel a pulse even when no distinct sound marks it. Musicians rely on this ability to keep steady time, and listeners often sway or tap their feet during music, continuing the rhythm even after it stops. Everyday experiences also demonstrate this phenomenon. The flashing of lights, the swinging of a sign, or the distant movement of waves can create a sense of rhythm simply through repetition. The brain is tuned to detect cycles and intervals, grouping sensory input into time sequences that feel natural and predictable. This internal pulse helps coordinate movement, speech, and thought, revealing that rhythm is not just a property of sound, it is a fundamental organizing principle of perception. You understand speech in noisy places more easily than you expect, even in crowded spaces filled with overlapping voices. Clattering objects and shifting sounds, the brain can isolate the words directed at you with surprising effectiveness. This ability arises from a combination of prediction, familiarity, and specialized processing pathways. When you listen to someone speak, your brain anticipates the structure of the sentence and fills in missing pieces that noise obscures. Visual cues such as mouth movements support this process, as do the distinct rhythms and tones associated with familiar voices in addition. The brain treats speech as a priority, filtering the surrounding noise so that the relevant sound stands out. This filtering is so effective that you may not realize how much interference was present until you focus on it. Deliberately, the ability to extract meaning from chaos reveals how powerfully the mind organizes sensory experience, emphasizing what matters and softening what does not. Being in water changes your perception of the world around you. Immersion in water transforms nearly every sense. You rely on sound reaches you differently, traveling faster and arriving through both skin and bone in ways that make it feel rounder and closer. Light bends as it enters the surface, making objects appear nearer or larger than they truly are. Colors shift as deeper wavelengths fade, first turning reds into muted browns and leaving greens and blues more dominant. Your sense of balance alters as the body loses its usual relationship with gravity. Movements feel slower yet strangely effortless, creating an almost floating sense of time. Pressure rests around the body, evenly dulling certain sensations while amplifying others, such as the feeling of gentle currents brushing your skin. Even your awareness of your own size changes as buoyancy reduces the weight of your limbs and makes your posture feel different. These shifts come together to create a world that is familiar, yet mysteriously transformed. Water reveals how adaptable perception is, reshaping reality with every ripple. Closing your nose changes the way things taste. Taste seems like something that happens on the tongue, yet much of what you identify as flavor comes from scent molecules rising through the back of the throat when the nose is blocked. These aromatic signals are muted, leaving only the basic categories of taste on the tongue. Foods that once felt rich may suddenly seem flat, and subtle distinctions disappear. Texture becomes more noticeable as your brain looks for cues to replace the missing sense. Temperature also plays a larger role, making warm foods feel softer and cool foods feel sharper. Even familiar dishes can become unrecognizable without the contribution of smell. This change highlights how much the senses cooperate to create a complete experience. When scent is removed, the mind receives only a partial picture and must reinterpret flavor accordingly. The result is a reminder that taste is not one sense but a combination of many. Each one, essential to the richness of eating. Distance is estimated using many cues beyond vision, although sight plays a major role in judging how far away something is. It is not the only source of information. Your brain uses the size of familiar objects, provides important clues, as does the texture of surfaces and the clarity of details. When objects appear hazy or less distinct, your mind interprets them as farther away. Sound also contributes with echoes and volume changes, helping refine your sense of space. Even the position of your body influences distance perception. Slight tilts of the head or subtle shifts in posture adjust the angles through which you perceive the world. Movement offers another vital cue. As you walk nearby, objects seem to shift position more quickly than those farther away, providing depth information. Your brain constantly processes all of these signals, work together to create an accurate understanding of distance, revealing that perception is a rich blend rather than a single channel. Familiar voices are recognized more quickly than unfamiliar ones. The human brain devotes special attention to voices it knows well. When you hear someone familiar speak, even a single syllable can be enough to identify them. This rapid recognition occurs because the mind stores detailed patterns linked to the pitch, rhythm, and tone of important voices. These patterns become deeply ingrained through repeated exposure. When you hear an unfamiliar voice, the brain must analyze it from scratch, considering far more possibilities. Familiarity streamlines this process, allowing you to interpret emotion, intention, or urgency almost instantly. This recognition remains strong, even across great distances. Through muffled sound or amid background noise, it reflects the social nature of human perception, where the voices of trusted individuals hold special meaning. The brain treats them as anchors, in a complex world of sound, allowing you to locate others, feel connected, and navigate conversation effortlessly. Expecting pain can intensify. Pain is not only a response to injury, it is also shaped by anticipation. When you expect something to hurt, the brain heightens sensitivity in the affected area, preparing the body for potential damage. This preparation can amplify sensations that might otherwise be mild. The nervous system becomes more alert, and muscles may tense, subconsciously adding to the discomfort. Even temperature and pressure can seem sharper when expectation primes your senses. The opposite is also true. When you expect little pain, your brain can soften the sensation by reducing its attention to the signals arriving from the body. These effects reveal that pain is not solely determined by physical events. It is a complex experience, built from interpretation, emotion, and memory. Expectation shapes the entire process, showing that the mind plays an active role in how the body feels. Your brain rewards the act of recognizing patterns each time you identify a pattern, whether in music, conversation, or the natural world. Your brain releases subtle bursts of satisfaction. This reward encourages you to seek order and complexity. Pattern recognition helps you learn faster, anticipate events, and navigate social situations. When a psalm resolves a familiar melody, or when a puzzle begins to make sense, the feeling of clarity is not accidental. It is your brain reinforcing the discovery. Pattern recognition also helps interpret language, allowing you to understand meaning, even when words are partially obscured in visual environments. It helps you locate important objects quickly by matching shapes or colors to expectations. This ability operates at many levels at once, from simple rhythm recognition to the complex understanding of behavior and intention. The pleasure that accompanies these discoveries reveals how essential pattern recognition is to perception learning. In daily life, you can hear your own name even within a noisy crowd, in loud environments filled with overlapping voices and constant motion. The sound of your own name often breaks through with surprising clarity. This effect happens because the brain is trained to treat your name as a highly relevant signal, even when your attention is fixed elsewhere. Parts of your auditory system monitor background noise for familiar patterns. When your name appears, the brain boosts its importance, pulling your attention toward the source. This process works even when the name is spoken softly or from a distance. It reflects the priority your brain gives to personal relevance. The same mechanism helps you notice other important cues, such as the sound of a child you care for or the voice of someone significant to you. Perception is not passive. It is always listening for signals that matter, ready to shift. Your awareness in an instant time seems slower when boredom sets in. When you are deeply engaged, your mind processes information efficiently, and moments flow smoothly during boredom. The opposite occurs with little stimulation. Your attention drifts inward, and every second becomes more noticeable. The brain checks the passage of time more frequently, making each moment feel stretched. Without fresh input to fill the mind, thoughts loop and wander, creating the impression of a slower flow when you look back on a boring period. However, it often seems shorter than exciting events. Because fewer meaningful memories were created, this contrast shows how flexible time perception is. It depends on how much information the brain gathers and how meaningful that information feels. Time is not a fixed experience. It shifts depending on your level of engagement, creating a rhythm that mirrors your inner state. Silence can be mistaken for sound. When you expect something, in moments when you anticipate a noise, the auditory system becomes more sensitive. This heightened attention can cause the brain to interpret internal signals as external sound, the faint movement of air in your ear, the soft pulsation of your heartbeat, or the gentle ringing that sometimes appears in quiet. Moments can be mistaken for actual noise. This effect becomes stronger when emotion or memory primes your expectation. If you're waiting for a distant voice, a footstep, or a signal, your mind listens so intently that even the slightest internal sensation can feel like confirmation. This phenomenon reveals how easily anticipation blends with perception. Silence becomes a canvas on which the brain paints its expectations, turning inward sensations into outward impressions. Gravity is sensed through an intricate system of tiny inner ear sensors. Deep inside the inner ear lie small structures filled with fluid and lined with delicate hair cells. These structures detect the pull of gravity and the orientation of your head tiny. Crystals rest on the surface of these sensors, shifting gently. As you move, when their position changes, the hair cells bend and send signals that tell the brain how your body is positioned in space. This system works constantly, helping you stay balanced, walk smoothly, and understand which way is up. When it is disrupted, you may feel dizzy or disoriented, as if the world has tilted. These sensors also help coordinate eye movement with head movement, keeping your vision stable. Even while you turn, the system is so precise that it can detect the slightest tilt or change in acceleration. Without it, every step would feel uncertain. With it, your sense of gravity becomes a quietly reliable guide. The smallest shifts in facial expression can be detected with ease. The human mind is remarkably sensitive to the faintest changes in another person's expression. Tiny adjustments around the eyes, slight lifts at the corners of the mouth, and subtle changes in posture all carry meaning that you interpret within moments. These signals travel through pathways designed to recognize emotion long before conscious analysis begins. You can often sense when someone is uncertain, amused, or irritated, even if they say nothing at all. The brain compares the current expression with countless stored examples from past interactions, building an instant understanding of mood or intention. This sensitivity is part of what makes communication so rich. It allows people to read one another without relying solely on words, even across a room or in dim lighting. You may notice a brief flicker of emotion that lasts only an instant. The accuracy of this perception reveals the deep social roots of human cognition. Your brain has evolved to treat faces as one of the most important sources of information, giving expression more power than almost any other cue in shaping your understanding of others. Your mind creates emotional meaning from neutral events. The world does not arrive with built-in emotional value. Instead, your mind interprets situations through the lens of memory, expectation, and inner state. A quiet room may feel peaceful when you are calm, yet the same room may feel unsettling when you are anxious. A familiar melody might feel joyful one day and nostalgic the next. Even neutral expressions or ordinary actions can gain emotional weight depending on what you bring to the moment. This process happens automatically as the brain searches for patterns and significance. Using experience to color perception, emotion shapes attention, guiding you towards certain details while allowing others to drift into the background. Because of this, two people can experience the same event in completely different ways. It is not the event itself that creates feeling. It is the interpretation your mind weaves meaning into the world, continuously giving each moment an emotional character that reflects your unique history. Straight lines appear different depending on surrounding shapes. The perception of a simple line depends strongly on the context in which it appears. When a straight line is placed among angled shapes, your mind may interpret it as leaning, stretching, or bending. Even when it is perfectly upright, nearby curves can make it seem longer or shorter. Repeating patterns can cause the line to shimmer or shift. These visual effects occur because the brain does not judge shapes in isolation. It evaluates them relative to one another, using context to interpret depth, direction, and position. This relational processing helps you understand complex scenes quickly, but it also makes you vulnerable to illusions. The surrounding shapes influence your interpretation so powerfully that you may be convinced the line has changed even when you know it has. These distortions reveal how perception is built from comparison rather than absolute measurement. The world you see is a network of relationships, not a collection of isolated forms. Low contrast environments your brain to misjudge speed when an object moves through a space with little contrast, such as a foggy landscape or a dimly lit room. The brain receives fewer sharp cues about its edges and position. Without these cues, the mind must rely on rougher signals to interpret motion. As a result, movement may appear slower or faster than it actually is. A car driving through mist may seem to drift gently, even when it is moving quickly, while a person walking through shadows may appear to accelerate because their outline blends with the background. The brain depends on clear borders to calculate speed accurately, and when those borders soften, perception becomes less reliable. This effect is stronger in peripheral vision, where detail is already limited. It shows how heavily motion perception depends on contrast, clarity, and the presence of sharp information when those elements fade. Your sense of speed becomes more impressionistic, shaped as much by conditions as by reality. You can sense when another person is looking at you. Many people experience a sudden awareness when someone directs their gaze toward them, even before making eye contact. This sensitivity arises from the brain's skill at detecting tiny cues in posture, angle, and social presence. The mind continuously evaluates the direction of others' attention using fragments of visual and auditory information. That you may not consciously notice slight shifts in body orientation or subtle changes in silence can alert your senses to the presence of another person's focus. Humans evolved in social groups where awareness of attention was essential for cooperation, protection, and communication. This deep-rooted system remains active today, allowing you to detect being watched with surprising accuracy, even in a crowd. You may feel a pull of awareness towards someone whose attention rests on you. It is not a magical skill. It is a reflection of finely tuned perception built through generations of social experience. Imagined warmth can create a real feeling of heat. The boundary between imagination and sensation is more permeable than it seems when you picture yourself in a warm place or think vividly of heat. The brain may trigger physical responses that mimic the experience. Blood flow to the skin can shift slightly, muscles may relax, and the surface of the body can feel subtly warmer. This happens because imagery activates many of the same pathways used for actual sensation. Athletes often use this effect in mental rehearsals, imagining the warmth of movement to prepare their bodies. People in cold environments sometimes picture fire or sunlight to ease discomfort. Even memories of warmth, such as holding a hot drink or sitting near a fire, can evoke physical echoes of the original sensation. These responses show that perception is not limited to the outside world. Internal states can shape sensory experience powerfully, blurring the line between what is felt and what is imagined. Your sense of scale shifts when your reference points change. Objects appear larger or smaller depending on what surrounds them. A medium-sized object placed among tiny items seems bigger, while the same object surrounded by larger forms appears smaller. This shifting perception reveals that the brain interprets size relationally rather than absolutely. Even architectural spaces play with this effect. A tall room with high ceilings can make you feel smaller, while a narrow hallway can make you feel larger or more present. Distance, lighting, and shape reinforce these impressions when reference points disappear, such as in a foggy landscape. Scale becomes difficult to judge at all. A small hill may appear enormous, or a large object may seem closer than it is. This flexibility serves an important purpose by comparing size across context. The mind can interpret complex environments more quickly, even if it occasionally leads to illusions. Motion can be sensed even when your body is still. The feeling of movement does not always arise from actual motion. Sometimes it is generated internally when your visual or auditory system detects cues that suggest movement. Even while you remain stationary, watching clouds drift across the sky can create a drifting sensation in your body. Standing near a train as another one begins to move can make you feel as though you are shifting, even though you are still. These sensations occur because the brain integrates visual and inner ear signals to maintain stability. When one signal suggests motion and the other remains still, the brain must decide which to believe. Sometimes it chooses the visual cue, creating the illusion of movement. This internal negotiation reveals how perception balances conflicting information, choosing the interpretation that seems most coherent. Your body may be motionless, yet your mind can create a gentle sway that feels entirely real. Imagined objects can feel as though they have mass when you visualize holding or lifting an object. Your muscles may subtly adjust as if preparing for its weight. The faint warmth of sunlight can guide your sense of direction. Even slight differences in humidity can be felt through your skin. Some receptors respond to movement across the surface, helping you detect crawling insects or shifting fabrics. Others sense deep pressure, giving you awareness of posture and contact. All of this happens without conscious effort, forming an intricate picture of your surroundings. The skin is not simply a barrier, it is a perceptual organ capable of sensing complexity. Far beyond simple touch, its signals blend with sight, sound, and movement to keep you informed about the space you inhabit. A single glance can change the meaning of a sound when you hear something ambiguous. Your visual system steps in to guide. Interpretation. A quick look at a person's face while they speak can alter the way you hear their words. A glance at an object that makes noise can shape your understanding of what the sound represents. Vision adds context, adjusting pitch, rhythm, and tone in your perception. Even when the sound is identical, watching someone move their lips or hands can shift the way you interpret the audio. This happens because the brain wants to create a coherent picture of the world. When visual information suggests one interpretation and sound suggests another, the brain blends them into a single meaning. This blending is not always accurate, but it is efficient. It reveals how closely the senses work together and how much vision influences the way you hear. A single glance can transform a sound from confusing to clear. Temperature can be misperceived through expectation alone. When you expect something to feel warm or cool, the brain may adjust your perception before the actual temperature even reaches your skin. A room painted with warm colors can make the air feel slightly warmer. A drink in a frosted glass can feel colder before you taste it. The subjective body. This effect arises because the brain uses prediction to prepare for sensory input. If the expected temperature does not match reality, the difference can create a moment of confusion or surprise. Some experiments demonstrate that identical objects can feel warmer or cooler depending solely on suggestion or context. These experiences show that temperature is not sensed exclusively through the skin. It is influenced by belief, emotion, and memory. The mind blends external signals with internal expectations, creating a perception that feels real even when the physical stimulus is unchanged. Surrounding shapes can distort how large something appears. When an object is placed near large shapes, it often seems smaller when it sits among smaller shapes. It appears larger. This distortion happens because your brain judges size relationally, using nearby forms as a reference. Even simple patterns such as circles arranged in different configurations can create surprising illusions. A medium-sized object surrounded by large shapes feels diminished, while the same object placed among smaller shapes gains a sense of presence. Lighting, spacing, and texture all refine this effect by influencing the context in which your brain interprets size. This relational perception helps you judge the scale of objects quickly in complex environments. It allows you to understand size even at a distance or in unfamiliar settings. However, it also means that size is never experienced in isolation. It is always shaped by what surrounds it. Visual flashes can carry a sense of rhythm. Even in the absence of sound, the brain can organize visual events into rhythmic patterns. When lights flicker at regular intervals, your mind naturally groups them into beats. These visual pulses can feel like music without any sound at all. The internal timing systems responsible for coordinating movement and expectation react to patterns in the flashes, creating a sense of tempo. This ability helps you anticipate motion and synchronize actions such as catching a ball or following the movement of another person. Rhythm arises from the structure of the flashes themselves as the mind looks for timing that feels balanced and predictable. This phenomenon shows that rhythm is not limited to the auditory world. It is a fundamental way the brain organizes sequences, whether they arrive as vibrations, movements, or brief bursts of light. Imagined threats can trigger real physical responses. When you think about something frightening, your body may react as if the danger were actually present. Heart rate may increase, breathing may change, and muscles may tense. These responses occur because the brain uses the same internal pathways to simulate imagined situations that it uses to process real ones. The emotional centers responsible for protection cannot always distinguish between thought and reality. If the imagined threat feels vivid enough, the body prepares for action. This response is part of the instinctive, a survival system that once helped humans respond quickly to danger. Today, it can appear during worry, memory, or anticipation it reveals. That perception is not limited to what comes through the senses. The imagination can activate the same circuits of readiness, blending inner experience with the body's natural defenses. Your mind creates meaning out of chaos without any effort from you when presented with a jumble of shapes, sounds, or ideas. Your brain immediately begins to organize them. It looks for patterns, relationships, or implications that give the chaos structure. A collection of random marks may begin to form an image. A scattered group of sounds may feel like a rhythm. Even random events in daily life can appear connected through interpretation. This process occurs automatically because the brain prefers coherence. It seeks order in disorder, meaning in complexity, and narrative in randomness. This tendency allows you to understand the world quickly even when information is incomplete, yet it also means that meaning can appear where none exists. The mind fills gaps, aligns fragments, and shapes impressions into stories that feel natural. Chaos becomes understandable not because it has changed, but because your brain has woven threads of meaning through it. As your thoughts settle and the night deepens, you might feel the gentle echo of everything you discovered. The mind is a vast landscape, always weaving sensation into meaning, always finding beauty in the smallest details. Even now, as your eyes grow heavy, your senses continue to soften the world around you, shaping each moment into something calm and comforting. If you enjoyed this gentle journey, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below it. Helps others find their way here, moving slowly through the stillness, one sleepy soul at a time. There will always be another quiet video waiting for you when you return, ready to guide you deeper into calm. For now, let your breath slow. Let the day slip away and let the quiet carry you toward rest. Good night.